Just prohibiting the use of AI entirely, personally, I don't feel like that's going to work in the long term. That would be saying just don't use Google. If AI continues to just get more and more attention, it's just going to be part of our lives. So we just got to find ways around it rather than just completely ban it. One potential future is that each classroom or each educator has their own model that has certain restrictions. And so you can be students, you can use this model, but it won't tell you all the answers. It could apply a Socratic method or just limit certain answers. So I mean that could be one way to mitigate the risk of the AI just giving you straight up answers.
I am an actuary.
I am an actuary.
I am an actuary.
Welcome to the We Are Actuaries podcast, where you'll meet leaders who use their actuarial powers to solve a range of problems and make a real difference. I am your host, Julia Lessing, and I'm a qualified actuary based in Australia. I help actuaries develop communication and leadership skills to build great actuarial careers. So settle in, learn from the best, and be inspired. Hi everyone. Today we're talking about something that all actuaries can relate to, actuarial exams. In particular, we're talking about preparing for actuarial exams, not just reading notes and writing practice papers, but how can we leverage technology and even artificial intelligence tools to help us prepare for our actuarial exams? Joining us for this discussion is Jeff Yang, a US-based actuary and FSA. Jeff combined his passion for technology, coding and education and built the Actuarial Nexus, which he'll tell us a bit about later, an online platform to help actuarial students learn and prepare for their exams. He's implemented several generative AI features on the platform with the goal of making Gen AI a viable tool for actuarial exam preparation. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
So, Jeff, as a fellow actuarial educator, I'm really looking forward to this discussion. And I understand that you use Gen AI to create course material and write practice questions and solutions a lot. So I'm sure your insights today will be helpful for students as well as for educators. But first, I want to start with a question I ask all of my guests, Jeff, and it's this. How do you use your actuarial superpowers to make a difference in the world?
Yeah, so I would say my actual superpower compared to maybe the profession as a whole is that I embrace failure. So I actually seek failure, very risk seeking.
Wow, love it.
Which is not typically actuarial, because I think there's something inspirational about just getting knocked down and not giving up and just pushing through until you overcome your challenges. So I would say my superpower is that I am a really good failer.
You're a good failer. I reckon that's probably a great character trait to have if you want to be an actuary, because most of us fail actuarial exams as we go through.
Yeah, there was one exam that took me 3 years to the 4 attempts.
Wow.
But overcoming that was it felt really good to overcome that. Failing along the way, it didn't feel that great, but the joy from passing on the 4th attempt, it just overwhelmed the 3 failed attempts.
Yeah. Would it feel even better than if you just passed first go, I guess?
Yeah, probably.
And so this embracing failure, was that something that was part of you and your personality before that experience, or was it something that you've kind of learnt throughout the process?
I think that's a good question. I think it's a combination of both. I think that one exam did teach me a lot. It also gave me a lot of confidence in myself. So right now I do mostly startup stuff. So I geared away from the traditional corporate path. But I think that experience with failing that exam 3 times and then finally passing, it gave me the confidence to know that I could overcome failure and sort of had the conviction to pull myself out. So it's probably just a combination of my experiences and also just a part of me growing up.
Yeah. That's a great superpower, Jeff. I love that. So you mentioned startups. You're in startups. I know you did some pricing for Medicaid for a long time, and now you are running the Actuarial Nexus. For those who aren't familiar with it, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. It's an exam prep platform for the SOA and CAS exams, so mainly US and Canada exams. Currently, where we offer 3 exams and are just working on more. It's really a technology-heavy platform. So there's aspects of gamification. There's AI. There's a lot of practice questions, mock exams, all the features you'll see in an edtech platform. And it just applies like a new perspective to it. Because for the SOA and CAS exams, there's really a couple of main providers that have been around for a while. And so I thought coming in as like a new competitor also just gives students another option to study for exams. And so thought it would be a good fit for my background and also my interest in technology and education.
Fantastic. And we'll link to the Actuarial Nexus in the show notes as well. What a great innovative tool that students can use to help prepare for their exams.
Yeah, it's got a lot of like features that like modern features. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about it in this podcast. Some stuff with AI, some stuff with like social learning and gamification, like stuff you don't really, that you won't find like everywhere else.
Yeah. So let's talk about that because, you've talked about leveraging technology this morning and elsewhere and other newer approaches to enhance that learning process. Why is that important to you?
There's three main reasons, I think. So number one is scalability. Number two is just refinement of education. And then number three is innovation. Mm-hmm. So in terms of scalability, with technology, you can reach a larger audience, like compared to say in a classroom or just through like a paper textbook. So that helps just reach more people. You can reach an international audience, and then also like just by the virtue of having things online, it makes things generally like cheaper, and it also gives people access to resources that they otherwise may not have had. Mm. So like for example, in the U.S., I think like higher education is. We have a lot of good institutions here, and maybe if you're, say, in like a third world country, like usually you won't have access to like MIT courses, but now a lot of these courses are like free on YouTube. So, one is just you can scale it and it's accessible to people. Number two, I think technology, it allows for refinement, especially with social media. So when you have everybody posting things online, the stuff that stands out tends to rise to the top, especially with instant feedback from like, say, like shares and likes and whatever. So I think that helps, it helps drive competition. So it helps like creators create like better content. It helps educators like create better educational material. And then finally, innovation in that, there's a lot of things you can do with technology that you can't really do without technology. So one of them is gamification. And a classic example of this is Duolingo, like the language learning app.
Right.
Where they put in like a lot of like dopamine hits, basically. So they make it like a game. And it makes you want to learn. So we do that in the Actuarial Nexus too, where like, you have a system where you're rewarded for getting questions correctly. So you're encouraged to like answer more questions correctly. Also just like adding leaderboards to learning makes it more fun and challenging because, you're competing with other people and you get to see like what sort of people or like you get to look at people's analytics and see whether they have a good chance of passing and where you are relative to them. So that ties into like the social learning aspect. And then finally, especially with like AI recently, it's been very innovative. There's a lot of things you can do with AI. And I think as we go forward, I think AI is just going to get better and better. AI has gotten a lot better in the past year plus that I've been using it. And, as it gets better and better, it just makes it like more accessible to everyone. And it also makes it more applicable to actual exam prep.
Amazing. I loved your point, Jeff, about gamification and coming back to your superpower of, overcoming failure and that dopamine hit when you finally pass the exam. It sounds like there's also benefits to creating dopamine hits along the way when you reach the next level or, top the leaderboard in a certain thing as well. So I love the way that you've harnessed that as part of the teaching and learning aspects.
Yeah, I think so when I was creating the Actuarial Nexus, I was really just thinking, how do I make the process more fun for people and also be effective? So one thing is just coming up with analytics so people can track their accuracy rate, because a lot of the early exams, they've had stable like pass rates and pass marks.
Yeah. So
with a large enough sample, you can sort of understand like who's going to pass and who's not going to pass. So for example, the pass market, so it's been around 70% for a while. So if you're not hitting 70% when you're studying for exams, you shouldn't expect to like pass the exam, right? Because like if your analytics aren't matching the actual pass rate, it doesn't make sense for you to pass.
Yep.
So I think just having the ability to track that is really helpful. So that's like the effective part / efficient part, because then you also know like what areas to focus on. Like if you have a breakdown of your accuracy by different topics, And then just to make it like more engaging and fun, that's where the gamification comes in. So like when you're studying, if you just want to study more, like if there's dopamine hits along the way, it just makes you want to study more.
Yeah. So instead of the social media dopamine hits kind of sucking us back into doom scrolling, your study platform is sucking us back into doing more study because we're getting the dopamine there. That's much better way to get our dopamine, I think.
Yeah.
Excellent. I love it. Okay. So what about educators though? So I'm an actuarial educator here in Australia. I'm wondering what you think, how educators can adapt and use those new approaches in teaching actuarial studies.
You're listening to the We Are Actuaries podcast, brought to you by Guardian Actuarial. For more information about our guest and today's episode, head over to guardianactuarial.com.au/podcast.
Yeah, I think that's a tricky one. And I can only speak to my own experience, which is also like very niche and nuanced. So, I've been mainly using AI for actual exam prep for the exams that I've been working on. Mm-hmm. And so far, I've written 3 manuals and like thousands of questions, like math questions and qualitative questions. Mm-hmm. But I don't really see myself as like actually writing the stuff with AI. Like I'm using AI, but I see myself more as like a curator or proofreader, because when I'm coming up material, I'm taking like source material that, I'm not like creating like theorems or proofs or anything. Like I'm just taking other like source material and then like putting it together and packaging it. And so I think like AI is really good at that. It's not really good at like, it tends to hallucinate and sort of like gaslight you into thinking like things are right when they're not. But when you provide it with like the actual right stuff, it's like pretty good at condensing it or like expanding on topics. So that's basically what I use it for.
Yeah.
So I can see it like, you sort of have to get creative with it for your specific context, or like different educators have to get creative with it for whatever they're using it for.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think there's a rule book right now. Like, this is how you prompt AI. Of course, there are like techniques, but I don't know if there's like, like a rigid formula right now.
Yeah. Yeah. But I can relate to what you're saying, Jeff. I mean, even as an actuarial educator, I'm not coming up with new theorems or concepts. We're all just finding interesting ways to assess students and create useful assessments so that they're actually learning, and also, making sure that we're leveraging the newest tools so that we can also be efficient in our process and robust as well. And I liked your point about how, especially Gen AI tools like ChatGPT can give you it will always give you an answer, but it's not always the right answer, or it's not always correct or complete or accurate yet. I mean, I'm sure it's going to keep getting better over time, but it is something for us to be mindful of as we're using these tools as well. Okay, so we've talked about educators using those tools, and you've said, there's no rule book yet. We're kind of finding different ways to do it, and we just need to be mindful of the limitations. What about students? How can students use AI to build their skills and knowledge as they progress through their exams?
From like a actual exam prep perspective, I think one of the most efficient ways is probably to combine it with traditional methods. So as a core, you would probably start with reading some sort of manual or watching videos, like learning the material. And then with the early exams, it's going through a lot of practice questions. Where AI comes in on the Actuarial Nexus, and I'm sure there's other applications as well, is that in traditional studying, you can ask like an instructor questions. And then you have to wait for that instructor to see it and then respond. Where AI can come in is that it can respond 24/7. So it's always available and it responds immediately. So I think those are like huge benefits right now. And there's still a lot of innovation to come. So like one of the benefits of AI for education that Khan Academy really pushes is like you can have it be a personalized tutor. So it can eventually like learn your habits and what you know and what you don't know. Wow. Obviously, like on the technical front, that takes some additional tinkering. But I think there's like a lot of potential for that. You can also like eventually like fine tune different models. You can also have it learn on questions and all that. So I think over time, it's just going to keep improving. I also think like, it already has improved a lot. There's like all these benchmarks where it keeps like getting better and better on the benchmarks. I mean, I think there's an argument that could be made that like maybe there's some overfitting there and that like it's getting trained on the benchmark questions. But still overall, I think like the fact that it's doing better still generally means it's doing better. For example, I've been using this for math for a while. And in the beginning, it was just like, it wasn't able to like add numbers correctly. So it's gotten past the addition. I think it's overcoming like subtraction as well, and just getting better and better.
Yeah.
So I think just by virtue of just seeing these benchmark numbers go up, you can only assume that like that trend's going to continue for at least the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Jeff. I mean, I guess AI is the worst it's ever going to be right now. It's only going to keep getting better, and that sort of iterative nature of as it has more information, and we create more information, it will just continue to get better and more accurate. Yeah, I remember some of those early benchmarks when ChatGPT first kind of came out and everyone was using it for stuff, and people were like, oh, you can't use it for maths, it can't do this, and I guess it's just, it's one of those things that we just need to be mindful that it will continue to evolve and it will continue to get better, but that we still need to keep applying that professional judgment and rigor around what's coming out to make sure that we are comfortable with the output and we can use it, or whether we need to change it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very well put.
Yeah. Okay, so we've talked about what educators can do in terms of using AI to do some of their assessments. We've talked about what students can do. They've got access to your platform and different tools that they can use as well. Both educators and students need to be mindful of those limitations and also conscious that things will evolve and change over time. I want to talk about cheating because that's something that's on the top of, particularly here in Australia. It's, a lot of media coverage around the universities and their thoughts on cheating. How do you think, Jeff, we can encourage students to use AI, including large language models, to help with their studies, but still uphold academic integrity?
That's a good question. So again, like my focus is on the SOA actuarial exams. So those are all the ones I'm working on are all closed book. So I do think like keeping exams closed book is going to mitigate a lot of issues around cheating, especially for actuarial exams. And I guess that could be applied to a university setting too, just make sure that you're not having like open book test or anything like that. Personally, I feel like systemically, it's important for the governing organizations to put out clear and specific guidelines around the use of AI, maybe for like take-home exams or assignments. So this makes it clear like what's allowed and what's not allowed. Yeah. And at least that gives the students that puts them on a level playing field for at least understanding the rules. Because I think with AI, there could be gray area where let's say, for example, I'm doing like a homework assignment and I use Google just to look up a concept. I think, I wouldn't see that as cheating. But if let's say we're Googling the concept and somehow came across like the exact homework question and then like just found the step-by-step answer and like copied it, like I feel like that probably would be like considered cheating. But with AI, it's like you can basically have it like just answer your question, but you can ask it in a way to be like, hey, can you help me? So it's just, there's a lot of gray area. So I think it's just, if the rules are established and, it's clear what's like cheating, what's not cheating, that at least like gets rid of that gray area. And then from there, it's just up to each individual person to like follow the rules. So from there, I feel like, if people are going to cheat without AI, they're probably going to cheat with AI. If people aren't going to cheat, they're going to not cheat without AI. They're going to not cheat with AI. So yeah, I think just like defining the rules just makes it easier at least to ensure like, this is cheating and this is not cheating. Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. So, setting clear rules about what students are allowed to do and how they can use AI, or if they can use AI, making exams closed book so that you are reducing that risk, and then requiring people to apply professionalism and academic honesty to their work as well. So some great foundations there. And I guess aligned to that, some of the things I often hear people saying is, but what if they're using AI, but it means they're not learning? The AI is doing the work for them. I mean, I think the fact that you have built this tool to help people prepare for their actuarial exams kind of dispels that myth, because you're actually using AI to help people learn.
Yeah, I feel like using AI to learn is helpful. And then like with the exams, I do think like assessing knowledge in a closed book setting is gonna, it's gonna test whether someone's retained that information or not, or whether they've actually learned it or not.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. So I guess that begs the question, what do we do about take-home assignments or, written assignments? What do we do about other things where we can't sort of control that environment? I know a lot of exams are online now, but there's a lot of tools to kind of moderate those as well. So yeah, lots of questions for us to be considering to make sure that we are, not just providing good learning opportunities, but also fair assessment approaches as well. And that people aren't getting too much failure unnecessarily, but also they're also getting that good dopamine hit of actually getting through and learning what they need to and passing their exams.
It's pretty tough. I don't know, like when I was last looking at cheating identification tools, like some like anti-AI tools, it seemed to me like the general consensus was like they're not that great at at identifying whether outputs AI or not.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's gotten better or not. But I do feel like just prohibiting the use of AI entirely, personally, I don't feel like that's going to work in the long term. That would be saying just don't use Google. If AI continues to like just get more and more attention, it's just going to be part of our lives. So like we just got to find ways around it rather than just completely ban it.
Absolutely.
My personal opinion on that.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think there's so many benefits to AI, and we will be using it and we should be using it. We should be embracing it as work as actuaries too. So I think the trick for educators is to work out, well, how do we teach students how to use it professionally, how to use it and manage the risk around it, how to know how to use it and not just pretend that it doesn't exist. So yeah, it's really there to help us. I think it's we're all just, as you said earlier, there's no rule book around this. So we're all kind of figuring it all out as we go.
Maybe one thing, and I'm just thinking about this right now. I was watching like Mark Zuckerberg, he's like talking about Llama and how his plans for that. And what he sees is there's going to be a bunch of different models rather than, just like OpenAI owning a model or like Anthropic, having like a big model. So maybe one thing that like one potential future is that each classroom or each educator has their own model that has like certain restrictions. And so you can be like, students, you can use this model, but it won't like tell you all the answers. It could apply like a Socratic method or just, limit certain answers. So, I mean, that could be like one way to mitigate the risk of just, the AI just giving you straight up answers or something like that.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, there's so many different possibilities for what this all could look like in the future. And yeah, you've just articulated one of them. So very exciting to see where the future of actuarial education goes in an AI world. All right, so we've covered a lot of ground this morning or this afternoon in your case, Jeff. It's great to have this conversation around the world. But I want to wrap up today with one question, and it's this. What's your top tip for actuaries wanting to use AI to help with their studies?
So I would say just use it, like test it out and take its output with like a grain of salt. Just, make sure you're thinking too and make sure it's not like gaslighting you and thinking like things are right. When I use it for writing manuals, I have to like review every single sentence basically, just to make sure that it's not just switching some words up. Like I think one thing that I found is even when it's summarizing things, because it's not like really applying logic, it'll like sort of change up a sentence, but the sentence won't have like the same meaning, or sometimes it'll have like the opposite meaning. So yeah, just like make sure you're reviewing the output and just approaching it from like a critical perspective.
Excellent advice. Jeff, thank you so much for your time today. It's been really great hearing about the Actuarial Nexus, how you're using AI to help students prepare for their actuarial exams and get that dopamine hit along the way before they get that pass. Jeff, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So there you have it. Real life stories and practical tips from a leader using their actuarial superpowers to make a difference in the world. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to get in touch, subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with your network. You'll find details from today's interview in the show notes below and on our website www.guardianactuarial.com.au. Until next time.